Now, moving forward from that conversation, we had already told you the story about the fact that Robert Kyagulanyi was also supposed to address his people, the nation, on Sunday, given that His Excellency Museveni cancelled his address to the nation. However, we also know that Robert Kyagulanyi spoke out about the recent chaos finally, and he called for a prayer session for what happened. And I will tag quote what he said. He said, "I send my deepest condolences to all of the families that were wounded, that were hurt, that were died, and those that are still in hospital. We wish them a quick recovery." Now, that's what the NUP president said. We'll first talk to a producer if she has the footage so we can play it for you, and then we'll come back and discuss the details. Afeti, do we have the footage with that story? Yes. Okay.
Nchidi nti abalala bakaliyo aya abandi basenguka era bajayiganga era ndidi nti abakaire b'omwiganga bayidi omukaire bali beta bwagu sekayi yali mudingu ino awo mwiganga yafa mu myaka ja 1950s baba we yankoba oyo mukaire we dada wange baba oyatola ku erina lya sekayi nali wa mutabani wange beta Solomon Kampala Sekai erina lyali lya dada wange bali bamweta bwagu Sekai yali mudingu weiganga kale no mubona oti abantu b'Busoga banenda ino ayenze na mbenda ino eyo tinso bibaba zendi Busoga ndi mwana wa Luuka. So I salute you, my brothers and sisters. I knew Museveni would not allow me to come and tell you these things face to face because he has survived by dividing us along tribal lines, along religious lines. But now he sees a generation that's so connected as if this connection was made in heaven. So he's so scared about us coming together. Museveni did not want me to step in Buyende because I would have told the people in Buyende that despite paying a lot of taxes, over 70% of them have no access to drinking water. I would have told them that. I would have told them that over 90% of the people in Buyende aged above 15 years, they only have senior 4 as a maximum level of education. He didn't want me to tell them that. He didn't want me to say that over 4,900 households in Buyende lack toilets and over 93% don't live in decent houses. He's scared of that. He does not want me to tell our people that they are actually slaves in their own country. These statistics I'm giving you are from, a government agency, UBOS. So Museveni is scared of that. Museveni knows that we can break it down for our people so that they really know how much he has robbed our country, how much.
Kyagulanyi Yatudao in his seat with the flag behind him, and he addressed the nation on various issues. And for me, the part that got my attention in everything that Robert Kyagulanyi said was not his Sunday address, actually. It was the prayer session that he held in Kamocha. And during that prayer session, there was a lot of emotions that passed around. We saw one of the people that lost their loved ones to the chaos, hugging Robert Kyagulanyi and crying her eyes out. And this is the kind of emotions and the kind of pain that we have been trying to preach against in this particular studio. And we've been telling people, and the political leaders and the candidates, that when people lose their lives to support you and support your cause, they're actually going to be there for you, but are you going to be there for them once you go in that seat and become the president? Lives were lost, and as we are counting, they're increasing to 55. As we are speaking. They're surpassing the 50 number because those that were harmed or were injured during this particular procession are also dying one by one from their injuries, and I'm speaking from a point where I am very hurt and I'm in pain for the lives that were lost during these 2 days, and from the chaos that Uganda saw from 1961 to 1980, because during the elections in 1961 there's a bit of chaos, and also during the elections in 1980 there was a bit of chaos, but this particular chaos that happened in 2020-2021 is unprecedented. Uganda has never seen such a chaos that took place and killed so many people in just 2 days. This is very new in our country, and we are praying that this passes. We are praying that as these presidential candidates continue with their campaigns, because our fear is that Robert Chagulanyi has been attracting crowds since time immemorial, and it's not going to change. But how are the security forces going to deal with it? Although we know that in the books of law, security forces are allowed to use as much force as possible to try and take the threat away. Now, the one thing we're supposed to understand as we are rioting is that as we are rioting, these security forces have been mandated by the law, okay, to take care of that imminent threat that is there at that particular moment. And they're not guided by the proportionality law that guides the humanitarian, which is under the humanitarian law, that guides the international law, and that guides how soldiers are supposed to treat civilians once they're in war, and how much force is too much force. But this is the question that I also wanted to talk about, and we needed to ask security agencies about this question. How much force is too much force? And the question should be, when you look at a reasonable police officer, because in our minds, we said that the police officers that took part in this protest were unreasonable. But if we look at the reasonable police officer, what would they do at that time when people were shooting them with stones, throwing stones at them, and there was a chaos and property was being destroyed? What would a reasonable police officer do at this moment? And if not today, tomorrow we'll get in touch with Fred Enanga to try and explain to us how much force is too much force, and where does a police officer have to stop. Now, as we're discussing, I'll be going through a certain article that I read yesterday, and it was talking about these things and how law looks at a police officer that has been attacked, and how law looks at a police officer who is working in self-defense. Because the moment you throw a stone at a police officer, you're no longer an innocent civilian. You become a threat to the police officer, and you become a threat to the nation. And by law, that security officer is not supposed to leave that place unless they get rid of the threat that is you. And at that moment, when they're working in self-defense and attacking you, they're no longer a police officer that is attacking, but they're working in self. Do you understand where the law has come in to defend these police officers? And that means it is our lives that is in danger. That means we need to protect ourselves first before we say we're going to take these police officers to face the law. Because at the end of the day, in such a protest, they have the upper hand in law. And remember, when you go to the courts of law, when you're talking about a judicial system, the upper hand is what? The law, right? So the law will judge, and unfortunately, the law is not on our side.
Well, Latifa and Tariq, I'm going to speak about two things. One, I want to first condemn what the civilians or what the Ugandans did during those 2 days of riot. It wasn't absolutely called for. However, there were those that were trying to exercise their constitutional right to demonstrate.
What are the constitutional rights?
You're free to
But here's the thing.
Let me first break this down.
I just want to tell you one thing, and then you continue. We must differentiate between peaceful demonstration that is a constitutional right.
So what I'm trying to say is that there are those who are trying to exercise their democratic right to demonstrate about their grievances, okay? However, what made it so worse is the fact that there were those that engaged into the demonstrations and they abused the demonstration. Mwe mwali abali barutinga, mwe mwali abali bayambula abantu, mwe mwali abali bakuba police. So those are the wrong culprits. However, mwalimu abachi abali ba demonstrating about those who are exercising abatufu, yes. However, now going back to the other point, how much force is police or security agents supposed to use to disperse
Yes,
of riots?
yes.
One thing that I want to say is that ekyobugagga President Museveni kyagenda okulekawo in case bw'aba avuddewo as a president of this country, ekyobugagga kyagenda okulekawo ge magye. Okay? Amagye agasomyeko okutandika ddala kwabo bagakulira tulinamu abalinamu zi PhD zi masters. Okay? So ekyobugagga kyagenda olekawo ge magye era naye akyogera lwatu nti has heavily invested in security. No wonder it takes the biggest share of a national cake. Okay? So kati twebuuza ababyo byokwerinda bw'obanga ekyobugagga kye bagenda otulekawo otulekera ng'eggwanga ge magye naye amagye ge bagenda otulekera oba polisi gye bagenda otulekera yeneekola bino bye yekola. That is a question I want them to answer. Okay? And it still goes back to how much force was supposed to be used.
Force, yes.
Okay? Bw'obanga ogamba yes, you've seen someone pelt a stone. Naye n'ottamu omukyala atunda akatogo n'okubamu omwana gwe batuumye okugula airtime. That's how the situation gets wrong.
I'm looking for the word to use for that. There's a word for it when there's a war in the country and then a masasi kubanga hits the other person, like a stray bullet hits the other person. It wasn't intentional, but it happened. And it happens when there are riots.
But even using live bullets, that wasn't called for. You can use tear gas. But the tear gas we bamukola mu World War I. Tear gas yali wakuwa bachi ba opponents. Nekati nachuka nyamukoso ku dispersing of riots. So kati there are so many options before you go to live bullets, before you get a gun. Nolemu okushootinga waggulu okugoba abantu. Okay? Because tuchimanyi buli lwokuba masasi waggulu, people run off. We saw it happen, at least there are those that did it. And abantu ne badduka. Naye olina okuba akute mundu atunuza bwati. Okay? Takubye masasi limu. Takubye masasi abiri naye anyegedde ddala obogenda kutta abantu bameka. That is what
ku nsonga eyo bingi byogeddwa ku right besinza kuba nti olunsinziramu nakatonya ku nsonga ya stray bullet kuba tulaba waliwo n'omupoliisi omu era yakubiddwa essasi naye nga yali badde mu uniform. So kituzaayo nti gwe nayagala okuba nti otandikawo akajagalalo oba okwegugunga kiteeke mu bwongo nti guyinza okuba gwe osobola okubeera protected naye waliwo omuntu atalina bukuumi obwo gwe ng'ojja kusaba mu liiso ogenda kuuma ekipiira omala odduka emisinde waliwo omukyalo omukadde tasobola kudduka sasi ligenda mukwata. So ekyo tweddeko ebintu biri ddembe lyaffe okwekalakaasa naye ate si ddembe lyaffe okumenya amateeka mu kwekalakaasa. Gamba kituufu tulina okwekalakaasa. Oboyi ya demonstrate paka nati yeekalakaasa yajjamu ngatto bakandisa bapolisi babugisha muntu bano batimawo baani bonna bagaye bagenda kwekalakaasa ni sat back ne bagatusazeemu campaign zaffe tugenda genda kukola kunoonya kalulu twagala kyagwalima mukole. So tusobola kwekalakaasa mu ngeri yengeetu tuule waka teme kukola gati tugenda kugula amaduka gaffe business tuzigale ekibuga tukigale gayika tuule waka paka mutadde omusajja waffe. So ebisala gendayo nnyo naye nze njala kudda ku nsonga gye tubuusa amaaso bwe kiba nga embeera eno bweti bweri tulina gimalawo tutya. Otunja abasajja wairo nga abantu bakyayogera ebigambo ebisongovu ku mbeera eno. Abantu bakyewaana, abantu bakyekalakaasa era awo njagala okusanyukira omukyala Kasule Mumba eyavuddeyo olunaku lw'eggulo opresa yaabwe ya NRM n'asaba buli muntu yenna avayo okwogera ku nsonga eno eyabaddewo agyogereko na lulimi lugatta. So si kwongera kulaga maanyi omukulu minisita wa security yavudde n'ayogera okulaga nti bujja kukolebwako ebigambo tebadde birungi. Olwokuba ne banadini bavuddeyo abannamateeka bavudde bagamba ebigambo ebyayogedde yetaga yeddeko si eka yayogedde wona omukulu zakatambi akagenza katamba social media omukulu Ismail Alexis blogger agenza ayogera ebigambo ng'alaga nga NRM tujja kola ebigambo bane tukendeeza olulumi olwo olwale gonza okubanga kyezeko nti gosobola okuba ndi oli protected basobola okwekuuma nga tebajja kutuukako naye waliwo omuntu ali ku street omukyala yadde atambuza akatogo ke tebasobola kukuumibwa. Buli twagala kutamba twala ggwanga lyaffe mu maaso katwogere olulimi olugatta byabaddewo twetonde buli muntu yeggwe mu mutima buli muntu yedde kutukulembeza Uganda yaffe. Gonna gamba nti golana kuba nti osigaza NRM mu buyinza NRM yagisigaza mu naye ng'ogenda kukulembera baani NRM gisigaze mu buyinza naye ng'eriwo n'abantu. So bwe tuba nga nsaba olulimi twogere olulimi lugatta abantu luzza myoyo gy'abantu.
Well, nze what I want to say, I think there's need to invest so heavily in intelligence. Okay? When these things happened, n'obutambi bwe nabadde ndaba nga basomba empiira gy'emmotoka bagijja ku mmotoka. Okay?
And they put it. Now those people were arrested just for updates. Those
but
people
what I'm
that
trying
were
to
seen
say
on video were
is
arrested.
that we need to invest heavily in intelligence. I was one of the people who was thinking out loud, like, bwebanga emipiira emikadde givudde ku mmotoka bagiteekawa. Okay?
There's a storage unit.
Gikola ebintu bingi.
Naye gye tulaba gye gikomawo ku street Okay? Anyway, producer atusuddeko kola. Hello? STV. Wow. Sigala enamba egenda kujja ku TV but what I was trying to say is that bino ebintu by'okwekalakaasa, people just don't wake up one day and tugamba tugende twekalakaasa or let's do ABCD. This was a well planned demonstration.
Kubanga olaba abantu okwekasa kwatanise ku ssaawa y'emu mu bitundu ebyenjawulo.
Yes. So kyenkola ebyokwenda, before you pull out those bullets, you invest more in investigation because prevention is always much better than cure. So let's prevent all those whatever no abali ku ground abetegeko okwekalakaasa abaonona ebintu by'abantu
nekana katugaba na Uganda affe tukegambe nze mbani wa Nuupu nga kulaga busali mu matuvu nti bakutte president wange Latifa najja nga ayagala kuba nti ayonona ensonga yaffe ey'okuba nti twekalakasa mu mirembe naneka okuba nti ayita ebipiira kwoca nze twala obuvunanyizibwa mu mukwate mugende Latifa kyokale kiriyo tweyonona kwekalakasawo kaffe.
STV. Hello? Yes, good morning. STV?
Well, let's wait for that caller to come in. But here's the thing, Simon Chris. I just wanted to get back to you.
Abagenda okuba amasimu oba okuba essimu tubuulire poliisi erina kukozesa maanyi ki okuba nti ekakanya obujagalalo. Ekomewa.
What solution?
There are two questions. One, amanyi gaina
kumawa
oba tuyinza kutokulwanyisa.
But I don't think okulwanyisa amanyi, the question of amanyi is not ours to answer. Hello, it's for the police to answer.
STV. Hello. Kendeza eddoboozi lya TV yo then olyoka oyogere na. Yes, please.
Yes, please.
Tukuwulira sseba amanya n'egyokubidde.
Producer, unfortunately, there are too many voices on that particular call. The question is, how can police end these riots without using bullets and guns? Because they said to deal. However, when you become, what is, hello? Hello? STV?
Kindly eddoboozi ya TV likendeeze. What a remote okendeeze TV. I think it's a big challenge. People want to listen to themselves.
Don't
sure
do
you
that,
turn down the volume
reduce.
Of your TV.
And here's the thing, when you reduce your TV and talk and then get done, you can go back to our Facebook platforms and rewind the show and watch it from beginning. Hello? STV? Well, unfortunately, as we're waiting for the calls, the other concern that I had during this period is that security used plainclothed people to deal with this situation. And we saw that there were plainclothed men who were holding rifles. Hello?
STV, good morning. Twasuze bulungi ssebo, amanya n'egyokubidde. Yes, sebo. Olowooza poliisi eyinza kukola etya okendeeza obujagalano oba okwekalakaasa nga tekozesezza masasi agagenda okutta abantu?
Kati poliisi ya Uganda ffe bwe twafuuka nakusobera kuba kati omuntu naawe ogenda nogerako ne bakutta ssibu naye bo kye bali kukola bakakanye ku busungu bw'obusungu naye abantu nabo bajja kukaka bakati abantu bakola okusiza ku poliisi.
We can hardly hear
that. Era n'obugambye nti weekalakasa emirembe era bajja kusigala nga bakukyuma.
Thank you so much.
I
I
had
had the
police
last
Kakanyo
bit,
Busungu.
and I've had the last bit of it where he says that if people protest in peace, then the police would not have to use such force. But the moment you start destroying property and the police has to protect that property, they'll use whatever force deemed possible to try and put you out.
Ensonga eri tricky. Fenga abantu twavudde ntulaga obwo omuntu ga solidarity eri nga bakote Kyagulanyi. Ne twaga twerwaneko.
Hello.
Yes, please. Good morning.
Okay.
Your name and where you're calling from?
Amanya mpita Kisubika Swale.
Yes, sir.
Kati oluzunga bandu wano Kanyanyani.
Yes, please.
Kati ekintu kiri nti wano Uganda n'oba ng'oli mu peaceful demonstration oba toli mu peaceful demonstration kiri nti era poliisi egenda kujja ekyankalanye lwansonga yo yenkola yayo kuva dda. Wano tulaba abasuubuzi nga beekalakaasa ku byabwe nga bali mu Kampala oba ku bya misolo oba bya magundi takisi zaabwe ez'ebintu era badda ne babakyankalanya ate nga bo tebookya na bipiira. Kati kyo kiri bwe kiti wano poliisi yo yenkola yayo. Musibe bulungi.
Mbani kyagusa ensonga yange nti twagala okuba tuvayo kulaga solidarity nti bakwata ku munamawulire munnange nvayo n'ennwana ne poliisi yo bakutte kuwaayo omukyala yadde ina kukola ki? Vugaze n'ennyondo poliisi yabadde ina kukola ki?
Yes, good morning.
Hello.
Yes, sir. What's your name, sir?
Bulungi mwasibye mukyo.
Amanya?
Amanya mpitibwa Agulu.
Yes, sir. Okubiddewa?
Nkubidde na
Endowooza yo eri etya?
endowooza ngeri omuntu obanga abantu poliisi omuntu awanika wanzize mbiraba kati Bobi Wine yasikesi munyi ayinza okumwagala omulala namu abaprezidenti bakulangaza abantu ne bamwalira okubanga mukaalo kati bintu bibiri byajawulo. Nze ndowooza ngeri ozeko giga ekifo ky'okozesa n'ekibooko okwogera n'okyokola kikyamu kikola osobola okunywa omwenge okwogera naye ng'ekyenkola kyamu kitegeera baba tubasisinkana naye ng'omukyakyakyakyakwakwana waliwo bamuteeka.
Okay, kirungi agambye nti poliisi esobola okuba nti eyogera n'abantu n'omulaga nti kyokola kikyamu othan okuvaayo n'okozesa tiya gaasi na biki. Situation eyo esobola okuba ng'etukibwako naye waliwo abantu batuuka mutuufu bata omusajja akutte ejjinja poliisi ogenda kwogera naye otyo nakirabyeko nga RCC wennaka wakikola nga yogera n'abantu but after the demonstrations. Yeah.
STV.
Hello.
Kale sebo amanya ne gy'okubidde?
Amanya amagulu enoka nkubidde na katasi.
Ani?
Magulu enoka.
Yes, Enoch.
Kakati poliisi yo. Magulu enoka. Iyo poliisi.
Wow.
Well, today the network
Because
is not
the
that
network
good, is it?
is
We
quite
can
messed up.
barely hear what they're saying. But see, the thing is, the moment you hold a stone, that is something that threatens the life of a police officer. The moment you threaten their life, they will use, I will repeat myself, any means possible to take away the threat. You
But
understand?
we can get,
So
we can have
to
other
be-
means in tunatuka kula
Let's
bullet.
start- let's
Because
start
it really
from-
hurts losing
You have
a
a call.
life. STV.
Hello.
Yes, Sebo. Sebo, amanya ne gy'okubidde?
Njebaleko
Kale Sebo, naawe gyebali.
amanyi wani bampita Innocent nsinzidde wano ebbanda
Yes, Innocent.
naye naliwo kwolwo olunaku enyini ewali strike naliwo nga ndina edduuka we nali naye omusirikale yali anyumiridde mu maaso omuvubuka n'amukuba ejjinja omusirikale n'ambuuza ate ono ayagala kufiira ki naye ekyamazima kiri nti abasirikale b'e Uganda tebamanyi eneekalakasa ennungi n'embi. Bw'obeera mu kwekalakasa okulungi bakukuba ne bakukwata, naye bwe weekalakasiza mu bubi bakukuba. Kati abantu nabo basobeddwa abapoliisi.
Well, he made a very good statement. I think all this entire thing goes back to two stakeholders. One, aba civilians n'abakuuma ddembe. Okay? Civilian manya wookoma n'omukuuma ddembe baako bw'otandikira nga tunatuuka ku wali wootuuse awagenda okujja obulamu bw'omuntu. There are quite a number of avenues. One, tear gas, rubber bullets, shooting in the air nga tunatuuka kuba direct ku nnyama. Olina osooka okuyita mu gino emitendera emirala egya tear gas, waliwo pepper spray, waliwo okuba mu bbanga. I mean, shooting at somebody.
But we will agree
wouldn't
to
want
disagree,
to get to that level.
Simon Chris, that during the peaceful demonstrations that we've seen where people don't destroy property or where people converge and they're not supposed to, police has used tear gas and rubber bullets. But now when people started destroying property is where we've seen police use live bullets to shoot directly in front of
Police
people.
kukozesa kintu kyonna ku peaceful demonstration. Peaceful demonstration gye twogerako yeeno tugenze ne tuwandiikira police, okay? Tugenda kwekalakaasa on ABCD, police ne tusuubize ne confirminga ngenda tuwa n'obukuumi, okay? Wabawo peaceful demonstration tukutte ebintu byaffe bipapula. Tutambula butambuzi ku street tetulina kintu kya muntu kye twonoonye naye ate nojja n'okuba mu tear gas.
The only time that has happened during the COVID-19 situation. Will agree to disagree. Sorry about that.
Police tugiwandiikidde tugenda ku demonstration tugiwandiikidde etukkiriza tewakya ne tear gas. Ne muvuddeyo ku street muzze tebakkiriza. Dispensing of tegenaga abantu abanauganda bategena baga nti muve wano bagende. So police zakyenda okukoza mukka muveyo mugende. So ekyo tear gas ejja mukozesa naye ku kizibu gyogeddeko ngenda kwegatta naawe nti abantu bavudde banayisa okuba nti bademonstratinga banabo kuba nti ojjayo sasi osobola okukozesa tear gas abantu tubagobeyo ne tear gas batambule bagire naye ng'era kiddeeri ffe naffe abantu tumakwera ku saidi y'abantu bagundi poliisi oba naffe bantu twetunulemu kyekikwasa ejje kyekikwasa ennyondo okuba nti okuba omupoliisi bomanyi naye onomuku naye agenda kuddiza naye alina okwerwanako kubanga etteeka limukiza okwerwanako ate bana ye kyalina ekyokolesa kyalina okwerwanako edifendings alina mundu ajja talina jjinja ye enkonyogo ye gyalina ye sasi. So naffe abantu gaffe tulina obusungu kituufu ne demonstrate in a peaceful manner kubanga ate bw'okwada ejjinja oba ofuse criminal that is criminal.
Ate nekino ekirala nakyo kyatukyoggereko because I think it was on a Friday that I said it takes a word to heal people's hearts. It also takes a word to accelerate violence in people's minds or hearts. So, whoever Katonda wabakuwadde, okay, Katonda akutaddeko emikono gye akufiseeko amafuta, your words can be spoken and people listen to them. Can we start speaking words of kindness? Words ebigambo ebigenda okuzzaamu essuubi mu bantu, ebigambo ebigenda okugatta bannayuganda. Nawuliriza nnyo ebigambo bya minisita w'ebyokwerinda General Eli Tumwine. Ebigambo ebyo nsaba tuleme biteekako nnyo myoyo gyaffe nabiwuliriza nnyo. Yabyogedde ng'omuntu naye yagambye kituufu poliisi okukuba amasasi kituufu naye mu kiseera kino si ebigambo abantu beetaaga okuwulira. Abantu beetaaga okuwulira ebigambo ebibazaamu essuubi, ebigambo ebigenda otugatta awamu, so si ebigambo ebigenda otwawula.
Now, as we're winding up this conversation, I'd like to call upon the police, who will be talking with in an interview very soon, to answer the question of why we saw plainclothes policemen holding guns during those riots. Now, what were they doing with guns in front of people? I mean, how do we deal with that?
We saw them shoot at people.
We've had General Eli Tumwine come up to answer that question, but for me it's not satisfactory because his explanation was to deal with thieves, you have to act like a thief. But at the end of the day, we want accountability on the fact that we saw plainclothes policemen holding guns, and we want that explanation to come because we don't understand. Civilians cannot have guns in their hands. Why did we have civilians who had guns in their hands? That question needs to be answered.